get ready to throw down.
Welcome to the show, everybody. Sales Throwdown. We are working from home, as is everybody else. And on this episode,
I'm in the office.
No, that's true. That's true. Clint is in the office. He's being a productive member of society for like the first time ever, or since getting out of the Marine Corps, since he's sitting in front of his Marine Corps flag right now. On this episode, we've had a couple of questions from listeners. We want to go through those and talk about those and try to help out. The first one comes from a guy named Dan, and the question he has, to keep it a little bit shorter, is that he is new to sales and actually wants to stay in sales, which was kind of interesting. He wants to not be on the installation side of his business, but wants to focus on the sales side, which is awesome because most people want to go completely the other way of not having to do the sales thing at all and focus on installation. So good for you, Dan. And at the bottom here, the question is, what advice can you give to someone who sees people ranging from, I have no idea about Windows or what I'm trying to buy, to they research everything and they're going to get 3 to 4 bids? So, Clint.
That I think of is just asking questions. So important. So, and sit back, listen, and let them give you information. Whether they want to do the installation or they don't want to. Get as much information from them and listen to what they are saying.
Good. Clint, on the far side of this, I mean, I think you have to deal more with the bids than anybody else on a more consistent basis.
Yeah.
Any tips or tricks?
So I'm getting people like that every day of my professional career, right? That internet research, Google, how do you install an air conditioning system in your house, and how do you install it in the new office? And then when you show up to the job site, it's, oh, well, why aren't you guys doing the 18 SEER? It's like, well, where did you get your information, right? So what I've learned is really to be kind of humble, if I could give it a word, and just, hey, that's some pretty good information. Where'd you get that knowledge? So yeah, absolutely DIY it. So these people are absolutely that, right? They got the DIY knowledge from the Home Depot website, but they're going to tell you as a professional installer how to do it. And you can be the guy that tells them they're completely wrong, and you're going to make them defensive. You can do that. It's not going to work real well. You can agree with them, and then you put in a shitty system because they don't know what the hell they're talking about, but you did it because that's what they wanted. Or you can be the
then
information.
it becomes your problem then.
Yeah, absolutely.
Them, right?
Your name's on it. Your name's on whatever you put in.
Well, you should have, and why'd you let me? Yeah, you get into some bad stuff there.
So I know quite a bit about Windows and construction. Let's talk about, the actual problem at hand here. Somebody puts in a new house and they say, I want single pane windows because that's what the internet said. This guy's going to say, oh my God, they haven't used those since the 60s. Why would we put single pane windows in? We have air conditioning, we have heating, we got to keep all that stuff inside. That, you can say, hey, you don't know shit about Windows, so let me tell you all about how we do it. And you're going to be wrong. It's just not going to work, right? You're insulting, you're coming off wrong. You got to humble yourself a little bit. You got to say, hey, that's some pretty good information. I don't know where you got it. Sounds like you're on the right track. Here's a little extra information for you from the side of the world that I live in every day, right? So you got to be that information card of giving them the correct information. Don't tell them they're wrong, because there's only a negative way to go from there. Hey, you're a piece of shit. You're wrong. I don't know where you got it. You're going to end up on one side of the fence that you don't want to be on.
Can I ask you a question, Clint? So at that point, do you do a comparison study to kind of show them what they looked at and then what the other options are, so that you can kind of throw all the possibilities out there and have that discussion?
Absolutely. So in my world versus, and probably in this guy's world with the Windows, right? It's like, hey, we want this system. And I'm like, hey, I see the upfront money savings, right? That's what most people would, I got 10,000, let's throw 10,000 at it because that's what this system buys me. But hold on, now you got a $700 power bill every month, right? Versus I need you to spend $11,500 a day, so an extra $1,500, so that you have a $250 power bill for the rest of your life. Those are very big different numbers, right? And the uneducated person doesn't know that stuff. So you have to educate, right? You can't give free consulting so that they go out and get you the 3 quotes. But what you got to navigate, and it's different in every industry, is as you navigate those waters, there's a fine line between free consulting and correct information give. There's a really fine line there, and how much you give and how much you know, and it's all personal, because I'm willing to give a ton of information, because if I give you the information and I really rack your brain with the right information, and you choose to go with somebody else, don't ever call me again. And I'm going to do that so many times. I'm going to find the right person to do business with that calls me every time for a lifetime on every project. And that's just the way I do it. There's a couple different ways you can do it. That's the way I do it. I kill everybody with information, the correct information. If you buy from me and we do you a good job, you're going to use me for a lifetime. And that's the customer that I'm after.
You brought up a key point there, and we do this a lot in the office. Most of the patients have the provider's cell phone numbers, right? So when you come in and we give you, we're treating you for diabetes or heart disease or whatever, if something happens, you pick up the phone and call us day or night. And, Nan's seen some of that. And people love that ongoing communication past the sale, right? Mm-hmm. So when you connect with people, and now you're at a bit of a different, creature there, Clint, and granted, you probably don't want to be passing your phone number, but the people you do business with, shouldn't they be able to get in touch with you for questions to follow up? And you need to give that right up front to these patients, these people, when you talk to them.
I don't want you to have any other phone number but mine, to be honest with you.
Well, I knew what the answer was going to be, but yeah.
Yeah. I mean, seriously though, I don't want you calling over my head or under my head in like the rank structure sort of thing. I want you to call the guy that can get the right decisions made for you to get the project moving along, because that benefits me and you as a buyer and a seller.
And I think John should just put his number out on the airways.
Hey, you know what? If you have a sales question, 817-345-7449. If you have questions, if you want to talk about the assessments, if you have a sales issue at all, text that number. We'll talk about it here on the show.
Yeah, so hitting back on this this guy's original question of like, okay, the range of zero knowledge, right, to somebody that thinks they know it all and they're your customer. How do you navigate those waters? There's, I said humble earlier. Compassion is truly the buzzword of this episode for me in this situation, because some of us, and depending on what disc corner you're in, some of us have 0, some of us have 100%, right? And there's a mix of how much compassion you have. If you have too much, you let them think you're right, or let them think that they're right, and you put in a crappy install, in this case Windows. If you don't have any, you push them so far away from you, they're not going to buy from you in any case, right? And anybody can swoop in and steal that sale from you just because they had an ounce of compassion versus you, right? So there's a fine line of how you meet in that personality spectrum of adapting some compassion and just saying, hey, that's some great information. I appreciate you sharing that with me. Let me give you my side of the story, or my 2 bits of information, let you process it, and you make the decision, because you're the ultimate decision maker, right? Yeah. And that all stems and for me, that all stems in the compassion world, that because I naturally don't have any, I have 0. Yeah. So
Clint hit on something though, but so to go to the compassion, but you don't take away their control to make the decision, right? No, you reinforce it though, right? And you so with or without compassion, if you reinforce your client's ability to make a decision with, like you said, the good information, and you don't steal their thunder, or you don't overbearingly, bring your thunder, I think you got the great, a working scenario. I don't know that it works every time, but again, just don't take away their ability to control the things they should and would want to control.
Yeah. And I tell you, I got a quick story that kind of relates to this whole deal that happened in the last 48 hours that I'm dealing with today. that very much goes into this. We had we do, my company, we typically work in big commercial buildings, high-rise hotels type of thing. So the when the smaller guy calls you to outfit his new auto shop that he built behind his house, it's very different worlds, right? You want to call a residential guy, but the residential guy doesn't know quite how to do that big auto shop. And we're dealing with this right now, right? But now we're talking about money constraints, right? Because you want a commercial system in the back of your house, and most people don't have $100,000 sitting in their bank account to put an AC system in. And I ran into this the other day. Not to mention, we're dealing with, just power constraints. Most residential properties are powered with a certain power supply, but you want to put a commercial system in and you don't have that. So now are you going to pay the power company $80,000 to bring you a new feeder line in? So this happens constantly in my world, and we have to navigate these waters. And one of the things that we talk about in prior episodes was, how do you figure out what a person's budget is, right? How do you figure that out without being rude, without bringing up the nasty money situation, right? That nobody likes to talk, or some people don't like to. Most people don't like to talk about at all, right? How do you navigate those waters? And in this case, I ran some quick numbers on my pad in front of him, and I just said, "Look, man, I don't know what your situation is. Honestly, it's none of my business, but I'm going to throw this number out there, and it's $80,000. Does this blow your socks off?" And he just looked at me and he said, "That's not what I was expecting. I was expecting $30,000." And I said, and so now I have parameters to work within, right? But his answer was very telling, right? I expected 30, you're telling me 80. And I, of course, you go, it's that bracketing. You start here, he gets here, and we can meet somewhere in the middle and actually do a project. But if he just said 10 grand, guys, there's nothing I can do for you. And you got to get out of that situation and get on to the next, right? Because it's burnt. There's nothing you can do. But now we're dealing with a real budget. Now there's something I can design within. I can design a whole system within, hey, what if I met you in the middle at 55, 60 grand? Does that work? Yeah, that, we could probably swing with that. Now I can design within those parameters. I know a budget, we've agreed on something. But if I don't ever ask that question, the whole job never moves forward. Or I do a whole bunch of free stuff, and then I shock them when I give them the quote, and the whole job's a waste. So, to this guy, don't be afraid to talk about money. Yeah, you're not going to know the final price on the window install, but you should have enough data doing this every day that, hey, this is a 4,000 square foot house. You typically just cost around 10 grand to put new windows in. If you were thinking $800, why am I even here? Right.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, and that's an education of the people that think they know, but they don't know. They look at a window on Amazon and they say, "Huh, I can buy a house window for $45 on sale." Yeah, guys. Okay. Yeah. And I have 10 windows, so there's $450, and the installer guy quotes you for 25 grand. How do you feel about that? Like, you got to bring those issues up. You just do.
For sure. And let's talk, I mean, that was a ton of nuggets and value, but I have a couple of questions and a couple of things. For me, I spend way more time talking about budget for my stuff because, like, as a consultant, like, nobody really understands like why I charge what I charge and and these things. So it's funny. I spend more time stretching budgets than I ever have in the past, and it's not because they don't have the money. It's because there's an expectation or a gap in the knowledge, right? And so we have to get in there and talk about that. But the other thing that I think really is interesting is that in your world, Clint, like, this is tried and true. Like this is just kind of normal. I feel like this guy with the window situation, I think he might have ways around this, right? Because
what do you mean by that?
Well, because I don't know a whole lot of people who are going to go get like 3 bids on home stuff, right? Commercial stuff.
Man,
sure.
I do.
Really?
Oh,
okay.
on Windows, yeah, because I went through that, and I had a 6,200 square foot house that we were redoing.
Stop bragging.
I'm saying that's the dynamic. And I walked into, holy shit, how do you replace all the windows and then put wood shutters? What does that look like? Well, that's $40,000, which blew my mind. And so what we did was we found somebody reputable. They brought it, hey, here's what it's going to cost. We can piecemeal it. So they put it into, smaller chunks for us. I mean, it was it opened my eyes. I'm like, damn it.
And I've got a,
go ahead, Clint. Sorry.
I got a nice little nugget especially in construction, whether it's windows, drywall, HVAC units, plumbing, whatever it is. I got a little nugget for you because I've lived through this a little bit, and I find myself doing it is when you see a customer, and the reason I thought of this, Doc, is you said 6,200 square feet, right? So you see that, let's say that little mansion on 50 acres, and you see all the things that they have, and you see the Rolls Royce sitting in the driveway, and you think, I can make all the money that I should have made on all my other jobs on this guy. And you load it up so bad that you don't get the sale, right? Versus being, but John, everybody,
it happens.
Gosh.
It's
and
horrible.
So what happens is, right, now you have $0 of revenue because you tried to gouge them because you thought that they had money, versus being market fair, knowing what your costs are, knowing what you should make per the market. Maybe in your business, it's 25%, cost plus 25%. That mine's not nowhere near that. Mine's more of in the 12 to 13% gross margin range of what I should make. But what happens is sometimes somebody will have a nice budget conversation with me, and they'll tell me, oh, I have $1 million, and I'm doing the bid, right? And I get to 800,000, and I'm thinking, oh man, I got $100,000 I can gouge this guy for because it's $1 million. But what I don't know on the back end is that he got a second bid. And because I tried to gouge him, somebody came in underneath me, and I lost the entire sale because I was unfair, versus having good conversations with the guy and saying, hey, this is market fair. This is where we're at. Here's our cost. Open book it. I'm always open for open book. I have nothing to hide. My cost is this. This is what we make per market. And I'm not saying everybody should be that way. I'm just saying that's the way I do it. But I've learned my lesson on trying to gouge people, especially on small sales.
Well, so then answer me this. When you open book it, how, as a consumer, am I going to know this is a real figure? It's like buying a car, right? Again. Sure. And now, having said that, if we work, and I'm talking about brand new guy that I'm the new customer. Now, I get if we did a job and repeat, and I've got a couple of those things going myself. How do you impress upon me that you're being honest with me? How do I know that I can trust you?
Yeah, especially in my industry, it's pretty common knowledge, right? Everybody has a share of the knowledge of what it should cost, right? So, for example, in my world, a lot of people will do square foot budgets, right? You have 10,000 square feet. It costs this, $25 a square foot. This is what I should budget for, Clint's side of the business. And then they ask me to bid it. So they've already agreed to a higher authority that this is what it's going to cost. Now I have to live within that, but they get their knowledge from us all sharing and past projects. So, I can fluff it 10% plus or minus and probably not get caught too bad, but eventually I will. But at least in construction, it's pretty common knowledge of what everything costs.
But you're talking about like a big corporation that's spending $1 million. They put a team on it, so they do a little research ahead of time. I'm talking about mom and pop. I'm wanting to do an expensive, renovation.
Yeah. So
how does a guy like me? If you were selling to me in this guy's shoes, the window guy, right, Dan? If you were Dan and you're talking to me and I'm like, okay, pretty big project for me, which, I'm the customer, so everything's going to feel big. Yep. How do you impress upon me that I can trust you?
Well, I would tell you this, if you are stuck to the money, let's say $10,000 just blows your doors off, right? Like, holy cow, you wanted $10,000 to replace all my windows? And if you're honest, right, this is why I always push honest business. I don't do anything shady. I try to stay everything above board so that when I get asked about my $10,000, I can open book it, right? And I will have no problem sitting down at the dinner table with you and saying, okay, look, the windows take 3 hours a piece to, uninstall. The new ones take an hour to install. My techs cost this much an hour. If we're truly down the road enough to have that money conversation, I will absolutely have that for you. When you get concerned, or you should get concerned, especially as a buyer, is when somebody says, well, it's just what it cost. Well, what do you mean that's just what it costs? Now I have to go get another bid to check your number, or possibly two. That's what happens, right? It's because enough people get screwed and enough people have no idea what the cost is. That's why they go get three numbers, because they have to compare you. But if you're open book and you're not afraid to show your cost, and hey, if the guy down the road does it for $25 an hour and you're 32, that's just what your cost is. That's your business, show them, show it to them.
Sure.
What do I have to hide? If you don't buy from me, that's on you, not me.
I like it. Yeah, I like it a lot.
There's a couple of people who are doing things that are similar to me, as like as far as like sourcing salespeople and working with them, coaching them, and getting them onboarded and stuff. And the circle that I run in, it's pretty small about the people that you can go talk about these things where you don't know anything about it at all. So one of the very first things I do is I talk about the premium guy in the circle, the guy who charges the most, right? Because if you know about him, then I want to have a conversation about why you're not just running that way, right? Because he's also the most well-known, right? So the most well-known guy is also the most expensive guy. Clint, I'm curious, why don't you just go work with him, right? Because I want to know why you're not thinking in that way. Because if you've already made a decision that there's value in his approach, then we need to figure out if I have a shot at it, because I don't want to work with you just because I'm cheaper than he is, right? My process is different. The outcomes are different. And there's a reason why I charge what I charge for that kind of work. But if I think the way to do that is as far as like building the trust to the point, is you don't how do I explain this? I'm just going to assume that they're going to, right? If more people are going to do that, and that this is a common thing and it kind of makes sense anyway, I'm just going to ask about it, right? A lot of people I talk to are going to go talk to 3 to 4, 5 people. I'm curious, have you talked to anybody else? Yeah. Okay. Who'd you talk to? These guys. Okay, awesome. How far'd you get? Well, we got about this far. Okay. What are your thoughts? Right? Because everybody prices things differently. Everybody builds their offering differently. And you might be skimping on your labor costs, but the windows are more expensive. There's always some trade-offs in there, and it's never apples to apples, right? So go ahead.
So you have to get it to apples to apples. You have to have that conversation, especially in competitive sales, when you're not a one-off, right? You're not selling a brand of shoe that nobody else has, or a type of watch that nobody else has. When you're in construction, especially windows, there's 500 brands of windows, right? How do you separate yourself? And I will tell you this, that you have to, education is huge on why your product is the way it is, why it costs the way it does. Maybe you make all your products in the US versus Vietnam, right? And maybe that's important to some, maybe it's not, right? But you gotta know that knowledge. You gotta have, why your techs cost more. I use this all the time, in the fact that when somebody says, oh, well, I went to John's HVAC company and they were going to charge half of what you're trying to cost me. And I said, okay, that's fine. That's fair. And if we're in that level of conversation, it's probably, I'm already risk losing the job, right? You've already made up your mind that a guy half my price is correct. When I work for a $4 billion company that does this every day, I should be the market, right? I'm the market that you should compare to. So if somebody is doing, let's say, $1 million a year, and you're comparing me to that, that's a really hard comparison. And I'll say things like, okay, if your whole building, we destroy your whole building and the install does, what are you going to do? You're going to take his, $100,000 house, his, $50,000 van. He's not insured. There's all these things. That's why my company costs the way it does. Not to mention, we put our guys through $300,000 worth of training a year. So you got to build on that, but you got to know that knowledge around why your company is the way it is.
You brought up something, and a lot of people, the first thing that comes to mind is all you're doing is spewing features and benefits. And a lot of people poo-poo features and benefits. But at a certain point, once you've gotten past budget, you've got a good bonding rapport, and you get to a certain point, don't lead with it. But once you've established that communication between you and your customer, and you know what their wants, what their problem is, then where do they sit in their mindset on, this product versus that product? Now's the time to go exactly where you're talking about, but not before then. Do not rush features and benefits till you understand the lay of the land, right? It'd be like me trying to jump in a Tesla and go four-wheeling, right? Mm-hmm. They don't match up. The features and benefits now, it's a stupid analogy, but it holds value in the sense of too many salesmen, and we have all done it. The first thing you go to are features and benefits. So no. Keep the conversation, pain, budget, all of these things need to coalesce. Now you get to the crux of, let's talk about why this is better than this one, and so forth.
I only talk about that stuff, and it's a great way to put it, Doc, but I only talk about that stuff when I get compared to somebody else, and I get threatened on why my price is high, right?
Agree.
Because I'm open book. My service techs cost $98 an hour. You know why they cost $98 an hour? Because they're the best techs in Texas, let's say, right? Sure. Or however you spin it or however you sell it. But I'll put my techs up against anybody because I send them to thousands of dollars worth of training every month to get certified and have all these certifications, so that when I do your project, all the liability is on us. You don't have to worry about a thing. You write the check, we do the job, we go home, right? That's it.
And this brings me to another point, because I think it's a great segue. Whenever you start down this road and you start to see them get a little antsy or pull away, I think particularly in construction, we do it some in our business. It's you're before you get to your features and benefits, you need to be perceiving something has not gone right in this person's world in construction before, right? Sure. So you challenge that. You say, hey, I get the sense that you've been screwed over a time or two on some of these home projects, right? Yep. And I think Dan could use that to his advantage to get a story about why they're hesitant, or why they want so much information, or why they, for the guy that may not know anything, or why they may not act, right? Why can't they make a decision? Well, part of this may be because they've made a wrong one in the past. They don't want to own up to it right off the bat of, hey, I got screwed over on this deal. Let me tell you about it. But if you ask the question, people want to get that off their soul sometimes, right? About why they are who they are. I think Dan could easily take all of this with a little bit of thought process of when he needs to say what he needs to say at each juncture of this sales process. Because Windows sales is probably, I would guess, in that kind of not quite door-to-door sales. It's probably a little more, I call you because I need some windows, but it's close, right? And you're probably going to be sitting at some dinner tables with some families that are, need new windows, but maybe, that might be the only $5,000 they have in the bank is to replace new windows this year, right? So the money topic is so touchy. But I will tell you this, that everybody sitting at that table, including the buyers, the one thing that they need to talk about is the money, right? Because it is so important. Yeah. You cannot try to sell around that. I don't know if you guys have ever done this or not, but I bought when I was probably, I think 20. I just got married. We bought a Kirby vacuum. I don't know if you guys know what those are.
We had a Kirby vacuum as a kid, and I've got a good friend who spent a summer selling them.
Exactly. So the door-to-door salesman, they caught me, open the door. It was one of the hardest lessons I ever learned in my life, to be honest with you.
What, to not open the door?
Yeah. They knocked on the door, right? And then I let them in, right? Because I'm a pretty nice guy. Hey, yeah, come on in. Let's hear your sales pitch. And while we're talking, they vacuum my house. They shampoo my carpet. And what the hell am I going to do now? I got to buy this $1,800 vacuum, And I got talking. Wow. I paid on that thing for like 5 years, dude.
Oh man.
And I hated that thing. Every time I vacuumed, I hated it. Every time my wife vacuumed, I said, just stop, throw that thing out, you know. But that was that. Like,
I have a question for you, Clint, though. How long before the pots and pans salesman showed up at your door?
Yeah.
you know, they got to trade those
Absolutely.
lists.
They're like a carny ring, right?
Exactly, man. They put a little mark on your driveway so everybody walking by knew you were marked, man.
Exactly. Hey, I got sold, but I had buyer's remorse. You know, like I knew as soon as I walked out, I bought this just junk, right? And it kills me because if that person, and I couldn't afford it, so you know that was the other thing too. It's like they sold me something like I couldn't afford it at all, but I got roped into it.
And okay, I have some questions here, right? First of all, do you have a conscience? I mean, I'm kind of shocked that somebody would come in and just vacuum your carpet and shampoo the carpet, and you're like, oh hell, I'll buy the thing I can't afford. That seems like such a very, like, compared to the Clint I know, who would.
I mean,
he said he was young. He said he was
20.
a kid.
I was 20. I didn't know it was my first place on my own. Like, it was my first time ever writing a check for rent. Like, this was a lot of first time things.
Okay.
And I just got sold, and I learned a lot of valuable lessons. Probably, you know, what hardens me is situations like that to be me today, right? Is getting burned by stuff like that is why I don't put up with the things I do today. I'm a naive kid from the Midwest, from a cornfield, dude. I don't know what a Kirby vacuum sales guy is, man. Let's hear him out. This guy's got to be honest, right? Everybody's honest. And,
I think,
and you hear him.
When I think of you coming out of the womb, it's like with like middle fingers blazed and like, you know, screw the
so
world.
Much the opposite. No, it's the opposite. I'm more like Nan coming out of the womb, and I've developed this hardened shell because I've been screwed and I've been pissed off. And but the thing, you know, the point of it is if that guy ever would have had a financial you know, sit down with me, I wouldn't have bought it. He wouldn't have been able to sell it because it would have been too real. And I think as a good salesperson, an honest salesperson, you have to have those conversations because it's just the right freaking thing to do.
Exactly.
Because I will tell you, Kirby kind of effed up because Clint's not a fan of the word Kirby any longer. That's for sure.
I'll tell you this.
And there's a message in that too, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know, if you've got a brand, well, guess what? If you want to grow that brand, you better be doing something right for your customers, and you better be looking for some satisfaction on their side of the equation.
Dude,
Absolutely.
And I have mentioned that story at so many family get-togethers or just friend get-togethers, and we've laughed about it because it's funny. Oh, Clint got screwed. Oh, you know, whatever. But it's funny because I can always look around the room and there's always one other person that has done that, and they put their heads down like, yeah, they got me too. I'm like, yeah, exactly. You know what I'm saying?
There's a guy
but that's why salespeople have a terrible reputation in the workforce because of shit like that.
Exactly. We do not want to be that salesperson. That's just grievous.
There's a guy from the Kung Fu school who has a AC business, right, on the residential side. And we're talking about sales one day, and he was like, man, I got the easiest sell on the planet. And I said, what do you mean? He's like, dude, I just got to wait. And I said, what? And he goes, our AC stuff's expensive, right? And everybody balks at the price. And I'm like, yeah, okay. Because I had just had to go through this whole process. And he goes, I'm just going to sit there with you. Because you know what? As hot as your house is, it's hotter than being in your garage or on your roof or on the side of your house. So like, this is not that bad for me. And I'll just watch that one bead of sweat, and I'm like, I'm getting so close.
Yeah. It's true. That's true.
Absolutely. So we're at time actually. So Dan,
awesome.
Hope this helps. Good on you for wanting to stay on the sales side, because not a lot of people do. It's kind of the first thing that a lot of people want to get off their plate, honestly. So.
But I think Dan comes from a great area because he's done the work, not just selling a product. He understands installation. Hey, Dan, you've got all the key components because you know the physical process, you know what the labor looks like and the time and the man hours, along with probably, you know, a lot of the different window installs. Some may take a little bit more labor, some a little bit less. So you're in the sweet spot of, you know, selling, which has kind of happened to me too. I don't mean to pat myself on the back, but I came from the clinical environment into medical sales, right? So it scared the shit out of a lot of other reps. They're like, man, you have this and that. What are you doing here? And I'm like, taking your job, bitch.
I mean, to that point, Doc, I'm the exact same product, right? I came out of the field. I put piping systems in. I put ammonia systems in. I gained this knowledge. I got into the sales side. And the reason I became a good salesman is because I had the technical knowledge to sit down and talk with people so that when they bought something, they felt confident in whoever I worked for. And it was funny because it would say, I could always say this one line, well, why don't we put this system in? I'd say, there's a reason I work for this system, right?
Yeah.
And because they knew me as an installer, or because I had the background as an installer, they'd say, well, the guy put him in for years, he's got to be right. You know, why would he want to sell a piece of crap system?
And
Boom.
that's where Dan can take that builds trust. When you say,
absolutely,
hey, before I used to come to people, I used to come after the sale was made, right? I was the guy doing the screwing in, pulling the old stuff out. Yep. Here's what I know about this. And that is such a trust builder when somebody can talk about that.
How many times have you had you switch from, let's say, Dish Network to AT&T, right? And the installer comes and he says, yeah, I used to work for Dish. Those guys screw you on everything. Let me tell you about the AT&T system, you know?
Yeah.
But you can be that guy, because now I have a lot of rapport with the AT&T guy, because, hey, if you used to work for Dish and tell me all the ins and outs, now AT&T may have the same exact things, but I have a level of trust with that guy, and now I instantly hate Dish. You know, it's just the way it goes. So,
yeah.
You know, use it.
You know, I kind of have that same thing, right? I work in tech and I'm a robot with no feelings or emotions. So, you know, I get the best of both worlds as well. I'm just like Al.
Only not as handsome and not as smart.
True.
Oh,
true.
Shit. I don't know about hell. No, you're not as old. So people don't confuse intelligence with age. Age just will get you there, right? You will know more at 56 than you did at 30, guys. It just happens, whether you want to or not.
We're going to end on that nugget right there before Clint gets another barb in there. If you have a sales question, if you're hung up on something, if you're not sure what you are, if you want to take the assessment, shoot me a text, 817-345-7449. We'll talk about it on the show. We'll get you hooked up. Also, if you just want alerts about when this stuff is coming out, we're going to start having some guests. We talked about that. So if you want to be a guest on the show, let me know. Shoot me a text. Follow us on all the social media. Everything is at Sales Throwdown. If you're watching this on YouTube, thank you so much. I hope you enjoy my hat and Clint's flag. And we will see everybody next week. Thank you so much, everybody. Cheers.